So, folks, I want to tell you about this cool show that I co host now. It's called the Transatlantic Call-In Show. It's a show for people to call in and ask trans people the burning questions they've always wanted to know, or to ask for advice, or to ask, controversial questions, or to debate. There's a whole lot of different ranges of calls that we take on the show. This call in particular is from an episode that I co-hosted with Luxander. Its content is phenomenal. Go check them out. Wonderful, wonderful content creator. But also, we got some wonderful calls. And the Transatlantic Call-In Show is, of course, a show hosted by The Line. Go, if you haven't heard of them yet, there's a link down below where you can go click on it and check out all of their other shows. They have many, many other shows. And also, you can subscribe, and you can find a link down below to the original episode that aired. So you can go, watch all of the calls at once if you would like. You can leave a comment over there. You can like it. You could also comment here. You could do all the things. You can do anything you put your mind to, okay? Don't let anyone tell you that you can't. So you can like this show and that show, and you can hit the subscribe button here and there. Don't let anyone put you in a box, all right? I believe in you. Never forget, I believe in you. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this call. I really enjoy all of the calls that we get on this show. And I'm going to tell you to like and comment and subscribe again after the call's over. I just have this feeling. It's like I can predict the future or something. It's pretty cool. Anyway, go check out the things down below. There's a merch store too. I bet you didn't know that. Now you do. Go check that out. And a Patreon. Oh, the new information just keeps coming, doesn't it? It just keeps coming. So anyway, go check out this call and check out The Line and the Transatlantic Call-In Show, or TACUS. It's every Thursday. I think I mentioned all the things. It's every Thursday. You can call in every Thursday if you want. If you just keep coming up with new questions. So anyway, let's get to the call.
We're going to bring in Noai, any all pronouns from Spain, who has a question about gender ideology. Noai, Noai, please tell me how to pronounce your name. You're live on the line with Luxander and Jack. How's it going? Did I not bring them in? Nope. Come on, call in studio. Let's go. Wake up. Hey,
hello?
You're here.
Hello?
Please tell me how to pronounce your name.
Hello.
I can hear you.
Noai. Yeah.
Noai,
Nice.
cool.
Hi.
All right. I'm going to let you tell Jack what your question is, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
what's up?
So, okay, let's see. So I've called a couple of times in the past, and it was for the same reason. I just feel like I didn't properly explain my point of view, so I'm gonna try again. So I have quite a bit of hot takes around the whole trans topic, but I just don't talk to people about it because I've no desire to cause suffering, I guess. Like, trans people already have enough social issues to be adding on to them, right?
Perfect time to ask your questions then.
Yeah, okay. So the reason I'm calling is basically because Donald Trump has been elected twice to the US presidency, and that is just insane. It's I've lost all hope in humanity levels of insane. And
yeah.
In order to not go and kill myself tomorrow, I have to believe that there's something that those of us who are rational could have done better to avoid this. And I when I look at the whole political situation, I feel like the trans topic is a huge part of why there has been such a shift to the right, despite the candidate being so obviously horrible. And yeah,
okay. Why do you feel that?
So partly like I've never shifted to the right, but I like about 10 years ago I watched like Ben Shapiro and like Steven Crowder and like those kinds of people for a bit, like just half a year maybe. And I didn't shift to the right basically because I'm an anti-theist, but like I can see how someone who has similar views as me when it comes to like gender and this whole thing could have shifted to the right if they didn't have some of the other beliefs that I do have. So
okay, do
yeah.
you want to just give us like an example of one of those?
Okay, so one of them is what I told Arden in the call screener. I think because I feel like this, I think a lot of other people also feel like this, is the case that the whole gender ideology thing is sort of regressive. I feel like we were on track to overcome the idea that people ought to be a certain way on the basis of their biological sex. I feel like we were on track to get rid of that, and instead of continuing on that track, we kind of pivoted into saying, no, okay, gender is a real thing. We should take it seriously. We should, like, instead of trying to bring the remaining pillars of this social performance down, I feel like we are bringing them back up, and yeah.
Okay,
I think it's bad.
so
I don't know.
yeah, I guess I'll respond to that. So it seems like you're coming at this from a number of different angles. One, you're using a lot of I feel language, or it
Yeah.
seems like language. And to me, that indicates that you're not really going off of any hard data, you're going off of more vibes, right?
Yeah.
And like the vibes of specifically like the far right, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, these are not, moderate conservatives. They weren't even back in the day, like um and I guess I would just say that what has happened isn't so much that, oh, transgender people went too far and now, the concept of gender is crumbling all of society. Because the far right has always been the ones that are policing gender identity. They've always, like, in some cases, literally policing gender identity by passing laws. And that wasn't different like 10 years ago. They also were attacking trans people 10 years ago. And I know that because I also paid attention to what they were doing 10 years ago. And like, they haven't really shifted their rhetoric that much. You know, um, what has happened is that the language that they used for their primary targets from like 10 years ago, which were, lesbians and gays and, queer people, they shifted their attack from focusing on those people to attacking an even smaller minority, trans people. And because
Yeah.
most people in America, for example, like we'll keep it America centric here, um, because most people in America knew a gay person, knew like lesbian, knew someone who was queer, it became a harder and harder attack, especially after marriage equality passed back in 2015, right? And so what wound up happening is marriage equality really put a nail in a coffin back then. And so the far right had to take some time to figure out, well, who do we attack now? And I a lot of my work on my stream is covering far right movements and far right individuals and like the think tanks that normalize or popularize different talking points. And one of the people to pay attention to where the far right is getting all of their talking points from is a man by the name of Christopher Rufo. And he is essentially his entire career is working as a man who finds different ways to create wedge issues or demonize different groups of people in a way that will resonate with conservatives en masse, as well as the far right. And what the far right does is they take that talking point and they run farther with it than mainstream conservatives are willing to go, because they know it'll get them attention, it'll get them views, and also it profits them, like, directly. And so what happened was Christopher Rufo, and you might remember some of this, especially if you were paying attention to conservative media. Christopher Rufo was the guy who came up with critical race theory as like a wedge issue, and is the one who injected that into mainstream discourse. And you'll notice now almost no one talks about critical race theory anymore. And that's because he continued to come up with additional talking points, one of them being trans kids in sports. And that is the one that we are currently really engaged with when it comes to trans people in America, because that wedge issue broke the coalition that had formed around like LGBTQ rights and issues. You got far right, sponsored groups like LGB without the T. You got like folks like Gavin Newsom going out there and being like, well, this wedge issue, I have to agree with the framing from the far right on this. And that's Christopher Rufo's entire job, right? Is to find those issues that give credence or some small semblance of credence to very conservative ideas. And the issue is with trans people, there aren't as many of us. And like in some cases, these states are fear-mongering around one trans high schooler in an entire state full of millions of people. Like they have created this moral panic on purpose and, artificially, in order to fearmonger against trans people. And this wasn't because like, oh, academics were going too far. It wasn't because oh no, now my daughter has to use they them pronouns for one of her friends. Like it was just because a lot of conservatives don't believe that they know a trans person. And because they don't know us, we exist outside of their bubble of people that they extend empathy to, unlike a lot of gay people, lesbians, bisexuals, queer people, etc. We are easier to demonize because we are an other to a lot of folks in America. And so that in turn has snowballed, and Republicans now use us as a useful scapegoat. It's a lot easier to give massive amounts of tax dollars and tax credits to the wealthiest people to ever exist on the face of the earth and look like you're still doing something that isn't just robbing your constituents blind if you are passing laws that demonize trans people, right? Like it makes it look like you're doing something when all you're doing is getting away with theft. And that's essentially the situation that has unfolded all across America through the Republican Party. It's why, like, the state of Kansas's legislature just overruled a governor veto with a 2/3 majority in order to legalize hunting trans people. That's not a response to, like, academics saying, oh, maybe we should use the correct pronouns for trans people. That's because they're specifically trying to conceal their own massive amount of theft from the American people and the American taxpayer. It's because they are all trying to benefit the Epstein class, and they're desperate to do it. And so, like, they're willing to demonize us up to and including it, putting us in prison for just existing. And like, that's not our fault. That is purely an outgrowth of their own greed.
I get that. Yeah, there's like America's kind of fucked. But like, what I'm trying to say is that I don't know. I feel like we could have done things differently, or you. I don't know. I don't know if I'm included in the. But
listen,
like, I saw this video recently of some woman. I think I think it was like a doctor testifying, or I don't know, somewhere. He was asked if men can get pregnant, and he was like so scared to give an answer. Like I feel like it's those kinds of clips and like I feel like 5 years of left-wing people refusing to grant like quote-unquote obvious points, and like small things like this add up. And
so you're blaming the left, a group that holds no systemic power.
I mean, I'm not like.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
Okay.
Maybe you don't intend for it to be
blaming,
this, but what is happening is a form of victim blaming. It's like, well, if you had just maybe capitulated more. I mean, you can disagree. That is what you are describing.
Can I?
No, the thing is, the right is
either
evil or stupid. So I don't expect to be able to improve their behavior. So I'm trying to improve the one that I of the people that I believe in.
Do you value truth? Do you value like the truth and like scientific honesty?
Yeah.
Okay, so should we lie in order to coddle the ignorant?
What kind of liar are you?
Well, because in the question of like, can a man get pregnant? The answer to that is yes, because trans men exist. Right?
That's just a question of language. Like we wouldn't be lying if we said yes or if we said no.
But
like,
you're
can
saying
a man
that
get pregnant is just a matter of definition. So
no. It's not, because a man is an identity. Like man is an identity. You identify as a man, right? Like a man, not you specifically, but a hypothetical man is a man because they identify as a man, right?
I have. Yeah, I did say I have hot takes. I have an issue with the whole concept of identity as well, but
okay. I mean, like, just for the sake of argument, you're a left. Put yourself in the mind of someone who's on the left. If you are on the left and you agree with the idea that trans men are men, and somebody asks you, can men get pregnant? Your answer is just yes, unambiguously. And
sure.
I think the instance you're talking about here is from like January. Josh Hawley was asking like OBGYNs questions and asked, can men get pregnant? And their response was, well, I care for many patients of various gender identities, and your question is politically charged, which is true, right? That is an accurate response. And so, like, I'm not entirely sure how it's the fault of like a doctor giving like a pretty nuanced and like cautious response to a bad faith actor who is looking to portray the left and portray science itself as full of lies, as
I feel
co-opted.
I feel like you should be able to realize that the right is trying to portray the left as some sort of cult that doesn't allow.
Whose fault is that?
Certain things.
I'm sorry.
To be said.
I'm sorry.
Sorry?
Whose fault is that?
I don't like how you keep asking this, because I'm.
Yeah.
Again,
so the thing is that what you're doing is you are trying to.
Blame.
Yeah, but there is blame. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to refine. It's like what's happening right now.
It's not blame. It's
oh my God.
I don't believe the right is able.
Listen, I'm going to take my space and I will mute you if I cannot have an opportunity to say my piece here. I understand the impulse. Like, listen, when a woman gets sexually assaulted, there are a million what ifs going through her mind. And there are women around her who are going, okay, well, you did this. I'm never going to do that again. And like, so yes, in the group that is under attack, there is a desperation in trying to thread the needle as to the exact right things to do or not do in order to avoid violence against them. That doesn't change the fact that it is ultimately the responsibility of the men doing the attacking that we should be addressing that problem, and that, there's a systemic issue of men not being punished enough for those kind of crimes and stuff. So yes, when we're talking about the anti-trans backlash, there is some amount of like grasping at straws to go, and like there are trans people who do this, who are like, listen, non-binary people, you make us look bad. You're not valid, because they're desperately trying to avoid being in the victim group. But that's not helpful. And it's especially not helpful if somebody outside of that class tells that class how they should be responding. So like you use any all pronouns, you have a masculine sounding voice. If you identify as a man or you operate in the world as a man in any capacity, you telling a woman how she should have done this or that to avoid getting fired or avoid getting sexually assaulted or like all of the discrimination that women face would obviously not be appropriate. It would be a form of victim blaming. So similarly, for people who are not trans or who, are skeptical of the idea of being trans or, use terms like gender ideology, for you as an outsider to the situation to be saying, well, maybe you should do this or you should stop doing that. Like, I'm sorry, but that is victim blaming. You're trying to say like, maybe you could be doing something differently and the virulent attacks against you would let up. We are not to blame for any of this.
I would also just add here that it's not just on trans issues. The MAGA movement here in the United States is married to the anti-empiricist movement, the anti-scientific movement. It's why we get RFK Jr.
Yeah.
It's why we've got Jay Bhattacharya. Like it's why we have a bunch of these people who reject, scientific and medical procedures that have been backed by over like multiple centuries of science. RFK Jr. is in charge of our entire health and human services, and he's someone who literally rejects germ theory. So like this isn't just limited to just trans people. Like, oh, trans people went too far. We demanded too much recognition too fast. It's like entirely because the system that these Republicans want to continue to prop up, the system that enriches billionaires who all visited Epstein's Island, etc. They're doing this because they get paid to do it. RFK Jr. isn't anti-science. Well, he might be because he genuinely believes it, but he also has a huge financial incentive to continue to be anti-science because he's backed by mega corporations that sell like supplements and, pseudoscientific quackery, because those companies make a large amount of money. And none of this is happening in a vacuum. And the entire reason they are fixated on trans issues is because it's very easy to arouse a large degree of emotional response from conservatives, particularly MAGA conservatives that are deep in the bubble. And that outpouring of emotion distracts them from the fact that they're being robbed blind. That is it, full stop. Like, I'm not entirely sure, like, in your, you're saying there's no blame here, but like, you did kind of say that gender ideology as kind of put forth by the left is to blame for Donald Trump being reelected. Right? Am I misunderstanding?
I never used the word blame, but okay.
Well, yeah, but like what word would you prefer?
I'm not saying I'm not here to place blame. I'm just like, if I had a button in my table that I could press that would kill a bunch of people from the current US government, I would press it, like, just because it would make the world better. So like, I'm just like, I don't care at this point. I'm just, if we did this differently, would the world be better now? Yes or no? If yes, then we should have done it.
Well, what I guess I'm confused. What are you saying went too far? Like, I laid out.
It's not about going too far. It's, I don't know.
What
I feel
is
like
it about
we lost the messaging, and
okay,
it was,
what messaging was lost? We need like more specifics. What about what your criticism is? Because otherwise, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, in particular, I'm curious what the fuck you mean when Kamala Harris didn't say the word transgender one single goddamn time through her presidential, like, so like, oh, like, how in the world could trans ideology or like trans rhetoric have had anything to do with Donald Trump getting reelected when the Democrats made a big fucking point of keeping our name out of their mouths? They did not support us. They didn't condemn us either. But like she literally didn't talk about us at all. So how is that relevant to Donald Trump being the president?
I think even if she didn't mention trans people, people on the right, people in the public already had their minds made up about what the left was and what the left wanted.
Did you know that Republicans are fucking tired of the trans issue? Did you know that in Republican states, they've asked Republican voters what they think about Republican politicians hammering on the trans issue, and Republican voters are fucking tired of it?
That's good. Okay.
Yeah,
but
that's good.
But like, what I'm still confused. What exactly are you saying? Like the left did?
So like when I say we lost the messaging, I think about what I mentioned before when I used to watch Ben Shapiro and those people. I think like all of those, like Ben Shapiro destroys libtards montages and like all of that. Those,
yeah.
I think all of that,
using their massive platforms to
ruined.
amplify social media posts from people who have like a couple hundred followers, engineering a backlash against a minority group that holds no systemic power.
Yeah,
that's called them creating a scapegoat group.
Yeah, like what I guess what's the role of the left in this?
Yeah, what could they have done differently?
Yeah.
If yeah, like I said before, I think the whole thing with gender didn't have to be described or explained this way.
What are you talking about? Because transgender like terminology has been around for decades. Like it was around like 30, 40 years ago. Like what
But it
what
kind
changed?
of clashes with what I said before about being free to do whatever you want regardless of your sex, and I'm aware that there's a distinction there, but like
trans
I mean,
people
I think
weren't the ones saying that you can't do whatever you want. That's conservatives.
Yeah, but
so
like there's hardcore conservatives, there's people on the left, and there's people that don't really give a shit that much, and it's these people who get manipulated into thinking
we
like
by bad actors on the right.
Yeah. Also, I want to ask, who funds Ben Shapiro?
So true.
Who funds Ben Shapiro? Who funded the Daily Wire?
I don't know, some right wing magnate, I assume.
Yeah, some right wing like oil and gas magnates. Who funds a lot of these major far right content creators? Who funds PragerU?
Yeah.
It's immensely wealthy people who are deliberately trying to cultivate a message that furthers their own interests, i.e., what profits them. At the and they're willing to do anything to weaponize that and make money for themselves. So like, I guess I'm confused here. I'm sorry. We've let you talk a lot and try and explain what your point is, and I've been sitting here for like 10 minutes now, like giving you an open floor and trying to understand exactly what you're saying, like the left did wrong. And you're pointing, well, Ben Shapiro did an, owned compilation around like trans people. But like what you're talking about is the result of like far right propaganda that billionaires bought and paid for. And so I'm kind of sitting here like, it kind of sounds like you're just saying the people that are being deliberately demonized by billionaires in order to act as scapegoats for billionaires looting our country. The problem are like the people who are going on TikTok and saying they identify with neopronouns or something. Like that's what it sounds like to me. And every time I say that, you're like, well, no, that's not exactly what I mean. And then I let you talk more, but you keep coming back to that same point. And I'm just really confused. So I'm going to ask you one last time. and I want you to like pull together your ideas into one cohesive bundle. And I want you to make your actual argument. Stop talking around it. Stop like trying to be like, diplomatic. I just want you to be blunt. This is the show where you can call in and be blunt about your ideas. Like, what do you think led to Donald Trump being elected that trans people had any role in whatsoever outside of being the targeted scapegoat of the Epstein class?
I think these people with money on the right that you said fund all of these right-wing influencers, they saw that the way that the whole gender and trans thing was being described by the left was being described in a way that could be easily portrayed as like in a way that would be unpopular with a majority of the population. So they paid all these influencers to like what we said to.
Yeah, they paid a bunch of influencers to lie and to deliberately misconstrue what the actual scientific basis of trans people are. So, like, the problem here is far-right propaganda, not trans people. The problem here is that billionaires have captured our media and are using it to completely destroy any semblance of, like, public education on this topic. And instead are deliberately lying so they can continue to loot us and ruin not just America, but the rest of the world in the process.
So true. Someone in chat asked this question, and I'm going to repeat it because I think it's a really good point. Noah, how do you know what leftists say or the left says about trans people if you listen exclusively to right-wing content creators?
You don't. I mean, you just know what those
you specifically are telling you. You currently have just said that you went down the right-wing rabbit hole and you listened to Ben Shapiro a bunch, and you're you're also saying that the way that the left has carried about this issue has contributed in some way to the rise of Donald Trump. And I'm just like, is your perspective of what, quote, the left says about trans people informed by the contextual representations that Ben Shapiro throws together?
No, like, this was 10 years ago when I watched Ben Shapiro. I stopped watching all of these people when they started supporting Donald Trump, basically.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you're not a completely shit person, then that's good.
But sorry, I forgot part of the question.
It's okay. I think we're kind of reaching a point where we should move on to maybe one last call before we do super chats.
Yeah.
I encourage you to call back again sometime. Maybe we can help, get closer to the crux issue, because I feel like we didn't quite get there this call. So I don't want you to feel like, we're going to leave you hanging, because if you call back, especially, the next time I'm on, if I recognize your name in the chat, or in the call screeners, I'll be like, yeah, let's continue that conversation. But thank you so much for calling. I hope you sleep well tonight, because it's late in Europe right now. And we'll talk to you again sometime. All right, Noah?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Later.
Well, folks, there you have it. You watched the call, and you know what? I bet it was great. Or at the very least, I bet Luxander and I were great at handling that call. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button and maybe leave a comment. Comments longer than 8 words helping the algorithm better for whatever reason. And also, while you're leaving a comment, you got to scroll down past the description and you could check out a couple of links in there. There's a link for the line. There's a link to the specific episode that this call was from. There's a link to the line's Patreon. There's a link to the line's merch store. There's a whole lot of links down there. Go click on them. Foster your exploratory spirit and go forth and explore. Or whatever. I'm not your mom. But if I was your mom, she'd be telling you, go leave a comment down and hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. That's what moms do, of course, every night when they tuck their children into bed. Anyway, Let's keep on going, folks.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.